Commander Lee Taeho stood on the observation deck of Coalition Station Nexus Prime, watching the stars through the massive viewport. His hands were clenched behind his back as he tried to control his anger. The news had just come in from the Outer Rim worlds, and it was worse than anyone had expected. The Korthak Empire had struck without warning. 3 human colonies had fallen in just 2 days. The reptilian warriors had swept through the defenses like they were made of paper. But what made Taeho's stomach turn was not just the defeat. It was how quickly the human forces had run. "Sir, you need to see this," said Captain Park So-young as she entered the observation lounge. Her face was pale, and her hands shook slightly as she held out a datapad. "The Korthak General is broadcasting across all Coalition channels." Taeho took the device and activated it. The screen filled with the massive form of General Vextar, the Korthak military commander. His scales were dark green, almost black, and his yellow eyes burned with hatred. Behind him, Taeho could see the smoking ruins of New Sol. "One of the fallen colonies, people of the galaxy," Vextar began, his voice deep and rough. "Today you have seen the true nature of humanity. They call themselves warriors, but they are nothing but cowards. At the first sign of real battle, they dropped their weapons and fled like frightened animals." The camera moved to show human prisoners being marched through the streets. Their uniforms were torn, their heads hung in shame. Some were crying. "Look at them," Vextar continued. "These are the beings who claim to be soldiers. They abandoned their own people to save their worthless lives. The Korthak Empire has learned what the galaxy should have known long ago. Humans are weak. They are cowards. They have no place in the warrior's code." Taeho's grip tightened on the datapad until his knuckles were white. Around the station he could hear other species talking in low voices. Some were laughing. "The Coalition made a mistake when they gave humans weapons," Vextar said. "A coward with a gun is still just a coward. We will show the galaxy what real warriors look like. We will show them how the strong should rule over the weak." The broadcast ended, but Taeho knew the damage was done. Within hours, the video was playing on every news channel in Coalition space. Social networks buzzed with comments from other species. Most of them agreed with Vextar. "Humans always were too soft for real war," wrote a Centauri military officer. "I fought beside humans once," posted a vegan Marine. "They're good at running away, I'll give them that. Maybe we should use them as shields instead of soldiers," joked a Rigelian pilot. Admiral Kim Dong-woo arrived at the station that evening. The old man looked like he had aged 10 years in the past 2 days. His gray hair was messy and his uniform was wrinkled. He had been commanding the human fleet when the attacks began. 3,000 dead, he told Taeho as they sat in the Admiral's temporary office. 10,000 missing or captured, and we didn't even slow them down. "What happened out there?" Taeho asked. Kim closed his eyes. "We were outnumbered, but that's not new. We've fought against bad odds before. But when the Korthak ships started firing, when we saw what their weapons could do..." He shook his head. "The men broke. Officers abandoned their posts. Entire ships turned and ran without orders." "And the colonies?" "We left them," Kim said, quietly. "Millions of people, and we just left them. The evacuation ships were barely half full when we pulled out." That night, Taeho walked through the station's human quarters. The mood was dark. Soldiers sat in groups, not talking, just staring at nothing. He heard crying from some of the rooms. In the mess hall, human personnel ate in silence while aliens at nearby tables whispered and pointed. Dr. Han Ji-won found him there, sitting alone with a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. "The Coalition Council is meeting tomorrow," she said as she sat down across from him. "They're going to discuss our status in the military." "Which means they're going to kick us out," Taeho replied. "Ambassador Yoon is fighting for us, but the other species are demanding answers. They're asking why they should trust humans to protect their worlds when we can't even protect our own." Taeho looked around the mess hall. A group of Altarian officers were laughing loudly at a nearby table. Every few seconds they would look over at the humans and laugh harder. "We've been part of the Coalition for 50 years, he said. "We've built their stations, healed their wounded, fix their ships. We've bled for them. But we've never really fought for them, G1 replied. Not like this. The other species see us as support troops, not real soldiers. And after today, they see us as cowards. G1 nodded. Vexitar's broadcast has been viewed over 1 billion times. There are memes spreading across the network, jokes about human bravery. Some species are calling for us to be removed from all military positions. Tejo felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. All his life, he had served the coalition faithfully. He had believed that humanity had earned its place among the stars through hard work and dedication, but now he saw the truth. To the rest of the galaxy, humans would always be the weak ones, the ones who ran when things got tough. There has to be something we can do, he said. Like what? We can't change what happened. We can't bring back the dead or rescue the prisoners, and we can't make the galaxy forget that we failed when it mattered most. But Tejo was already thinking. Deep in his memory, something was stirring. An old law he had studied years ago at the academy. Something about honor in combat and the right to prove oneself. Maybe we can't change what happened, he said slowly, but maybe we can change what happens next. The next morning, Tejo was in the station's legal database, searching through thousands of old coalition laws and regulations. It took him 6 hours to find what he was looking for, but when he did, he smiled for the first time in days. The right of single combat. An ancient law that allowed any member species to restore their honor through trial by battle. It had not been used in over 200 years, but it was still valid. One warrior, one chance, one opportunity to show the galaxy that humans were not cowards. Tejo looked out at the stars and made his decision. If words could not restore humanity's honor, then perhaps blood could. The Coalition Council chambers had never been so quiet. Representatives from dozens of species sat in their seats, all staring at the human delegation. Commander Lee Tejo stood at the center of the room, holding an ancient legal document that most of them had forgotten existed. The right of single combat, he announced, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. Coalition Code 847, Section 12. Any member species may restore honor lost in warfare through individual trial by battle. The Centauri delegate was the first to speak. That law is over 800 years old. It was written when we fought with swords and spears, not starships and plasma cannons. But it's still valid, Ambassador Yoon Hye-jin said from her seat in the human section. The law has never been repealed or modified. Any coalition member can invoke it. A ripple of conversation went through the chamber. The Vegan military attaché stood up, his blue skin darker than usual with anger. This is ridiculous. You cannot restore the honor of an entire species through single combat. Your people fled the battlefield. Your commanders abandoned colonies full of civilians. No amount of fighting can change that. The law is clear, Tejo replied calmly. One warrior, fighting for the honor of his people, can challenge the accusers to prove their worth in battle. If our champion wins, humanity's honor is restored. If he loses, he paused. Then we accept whatever judgment the council sees fit. The chamber erupted in noise. Some delegates were laughing. Others were arguing among themselves. The Rigelian ambassador was shaking his head in disbelief, but the Altarian Chief Justice, who presided over the council, was reading through the ancient law on her datapad. After several minutes, she called for silence. The human request is legally valid, she announced. However, the accused party must accept the challenge. Since the initial accusation came from the Korthak Empire, they have the right to refuse. All eyes turned to the massive screen at the front of the chamber. General Vextar's image filled it, broadcast live from his flagship. His yellow eyes gleamed with what looked like amusement. So, he said, his voice rumbling through the speakers, the cowards want to play at being warriors. Very well. The Korthak Empire accepts this challenge. We will show the galaxy once and for all what happens when weaklings try to fight the strong. The chamber fell silent again. Even the delegates who had been laughing looked uncomfortable now. Everyone knew what Korthak warriors were capable of. The trials will consist of 3 challenges, Vextar continued. Raw combat, strategic warfare, and a final battle to the death. Your champion will face our greatest warriors. When he is broken and bleeding, when he begs for mercy, the galaxy will see the truth about human courage." Tejo felt his heart pounding, but he kept his face calm. "We accept these terms." "Then choose your champion," Vextar said. "Choose the best warrior humanity has to offer. Choose the one who will die for your foolish pride." The transmission ended. The chamber broke into chaos as delegates argued and shouted. Some were already taking bets on how quickly the human champion would fall. Tejo left the chamber and walked quickly to the military section of the station. He knew exactly who he needed to find. Master Sergeant Cho Min-ho was in the training center, as he always was during his off-duty hours. The man was 42 years old with gray streaks in his black hair and scars covering his arms. He had been fighting for humanity for over 20 years, first against pirates and rebels, then against the various threats the coalition faced. "Sergeant," Tejo called out as he entered the training room. Min-ho finished his exercise routine before turning around. "Commander, I heard about what you did in the council chambers. Every human on the station is talking about it. I need someone to fight for us," Tejo said directly. "Someone who can face the Korthak champions and have a chance of winning." Min-ho was quiet for a long moment. Then he picked up a towel and wiped the sweat from his face. "The Korthak killed my family," he said quietly. "My wife and children were on New Sol when the attack came. They were in the evacuation center when the bombs fell." Tejo felt a chill run down his spine. He had not known about Min-ho's personal loss. "I've been thinking about this for 3 days," Min-ho continued. "Thinking about what I would do if I ever got the chance to face them. Not just for revenge, but for everyone they've hurt. For every human they've called a coward." "Will you do it?" Min-ho looked at him with eyes that had seen too much war. "I'll do it. But I want to make something clear. This isn't about proving we're not cowards. Any fool with eyes can see that humans have courage. This is about showing the galaxy that we're tired of being treated like second-class citizens." Word spread quickly through the human sections of the station. Within hours, every human in Coalition space knew about the challenge and who would represent them. Some thought it was hopeless. Others called it suicide. But many felt something they had not felt in days. Hope. Dr. Han Ji-won came to see Tejo that evening. "I've been studying Korthak combat techniques," she said, placing a data pad on his desk. "They're stronger than humans, faster in short bursts, and their scales provide natural armor. But they have weaknesses, such as they fight with rage, not strategy. They believe that the strongest warrior always wins. They don't understand concepts like sacrifice or fighting for something greater than yourself." Captain Park So-young joined them, along with several other human officers. Word had gotten out about what they were planning, and everyone wanted to help. "I've been looking at their equipment," So-young said. "Their weapons are powerful but crude. They rely on brute force instead of precision. If we can develop the right gear for Min-ho, he might have a chance." Professor Oh Jae-sung from the research department had been working through the night. "I can build him adaptive armor," he said, "something that can adjust to different types of attacks, and weapons that can exploit Korthak weaknesses." Over. The next few hours they planned and prepared. Every human on the station contributed something. Intelligence officers provided data on Korthak fighting styles. Engineers worked on equipment designs. Medical staff prepared treatment plans for injuries that Min-ho was sure to receive. But the most important preparation was mental. Min-ho spent long hours with Dr. Ji-won, learning about Korthak psychology and culture. He studied recordings of their warriors in battle, looking for patterns and weaknesses. "They expect their enemies to break," Ji-won explained. "Their whole fighting philosophy is based on intimidating opponents into giving up. They don't know how to handle someone who refuses to quit." "Then they're about to get an education," Min-ho replied. The news of the challenge spread throughout Coalition space. Most alien species thought it was entertaining. Betting pools opened on how long the human champion would last. The odds were heavily against Min-ho surviving the first trial. But among humans throughout the galaxy, something different was happening. For the first time since the defeat, They were standing straight and looking their alien colleagues in the eye. They were no longer apologizing for their existence. The trials would be held on Kepler Station, a neutral world in the Outer Rim. Representatives from every coalition species would attend, along with media crews and military observers. As the transport ship carrying Minho and the human delegation departed Nexus Prime, Taeho felt a mixture of fear and pride. They were gambling everything on one man's ability to fight impossible odds. But as he watched Minho preparing for the battles ahead, he realized that they had already won something important. They had shown the galaxy that humans would fight, for their honor, even when the odds were hopeless. The real test would come when Minho stepped into the arena. But for now, humanity had stopped running. Kepler Station orbited a dead world on the edge of coalition space. It had been built as a neutral meeting place for diplomatic negotiations and trade agreements. Now it would host something far more violent. Master Sergeant Cho Min-ho stood in his quarters, looking at the armor that Professor O.J. Sung had designed for him. It was lighter than standard coalition military gear, but the professor claimed it could adapt to different types of attacks. The weapons were simple but effective: a plasma rifle, a combat knife, and a sidearm. "Remember," Dr. Han Ji-won said, as she reviewed his medical scans one final time, "Korthak physiology shows they have excellent burst strength but poor endurance. Their scales are tough but flexible at the joints. And most importantly, they've never faced an opponent who fights purely to survive." Minho nodded. He had been studying Korthak combat footage for weeks. Their warriors were brutal and direct. They used overwhelming force to crush their enemies quickly. They had no experience with opponents who could absorb punishment and keep. Fighting Captain Park So-young entered the room with the latest intelligence reports. "We've identified the 3 champions you'll be facing," she said, activating a holographic display. The first image showed a massive Korthak warrior, easily 8 feet tall and covered in thick scales. "War Chief Grokthar," So-young explained. "He's killed over 200 enemies in single combat, never been defeated. He prefers to crush opponents with his bare hands." The second image was smaller but somehow more frightening. This Korthak had intelligent eyes and moved with careful precision. Tactician Silvex. He's commanded 17 major battles and never lost one. He's also a skilled individual fighter. The final image made Minho's blood run cold. The Korthak in the picture seemed to blend with the shadows around him. Shadowblade Mordak. He's an assassin. Over 300 confirmed kills, including several coalition generals. He's never failed a mission. "These are the best warriors the Korthak Empire has," So-young continued. "Each one could probably defeat a dozen normal soldiers." "Good," Minho said quietly. "If I'm going to prove something, it might as well be against the best." The next morning, representatives from across the galaxy gathered in Kepler Station's main arena. The circular chamber could hold 10,000 spectators, and every seat was filled. News crews from hundreds of worlds broadcast the event live to billions of viewers. Commander Lee Taeho sat in the human delegation box trying to control his nerves. Around him, the few dozen humans who had come to witness the trials looked pale and worried. In the boxes reserved for other species, he could hear laughter and casual betting. General Vextar's image appeared on the massive screens around the arena. "People of the galaxy," he announced, "today you will see the final proof that humans are unworthy to call themselves warriors. Our champions will show you what real strength looks like." The arena floor opened, revealing a circular combat pit 50 meters across. The walls were smooth metal, impossible to climb. There were no weapons or cover, just an empty space where 2 beings would fight until one could not continue. War Chief Grokthar entered from one side. The massive Korthak warrior moved slowly, his scales gleaming under the arena lights. He carried no weapons, relying instead on claws and teeth that could tear through metal. The crowd cheered as he raised his arms in victory before the fight had even begun. From the other side, Minho entered the pit. He looked tiny compared to his opponent, a normal-sized human facing a monster. He wore his adaptive armor and carried only a combat knife. The crowd grew quiet, some spectators feeling uncomfortable at the obvious mismatch. First trial, announced the arena's artificial intelligence. Combat ends when one fighter cannot continue or yields. Begin. Grokthar charged immediately, moving, faster than something his size should be able to. His claws swept toward Minho's head, aiming to end the fight with a single blow. But Minho was not there when the claws arrived. He had dropped and rolled, coming up behind the Korthak warrior with his knife aimed at the joint where the leg met the hip. The blade found its mark, drawing first blood. Grokthar roared in pain and anger. He spun around, his massive arm swinging in a wide arc. The blow caught Minho in the ribs, lifting him off his feet and sending him crashing into the arena wall. The human champion rolled away just as Grokthar's foot smashed into the metal where his head had been. Minho was hurt, but he was still moving, still fighting. For 20 minutes the battle continued. Grokthar used his size and strength to dominate the arena, but Minho used speed and intelligence to stay alive. Every time the Korthak warrior thought he had landed a killing blow, the human would slip away and strike back. Slowly, the wounds accumulated. Grokthar bled from dozens of cuts, each one small but painful. His movements became slower, less coordinated. The burst of energy that made Korthak warrior so dangerous was fading. Minho was not unmarked. His armor was cracked, and blood ran from cuts on his face and arms. But he was still standing, still fighting, still refusing to give up. The end came suddenly. Grokthar, exhausted and frustrated, made a desperate lunge. Minho sidestepped and drove his knife deep into the nerve cluster at the base of the Korthak's neck. The massive warrior collapsed, paralyzed but alive. The arena fell silent. No one had expected the human to win. In the human delegation box, Taiho felt tears running down his face. First trial to the human champion, the AI announced, but Minho did not celebrate. He helped Grokthar to his feet and supported him as medical teams entered the arena. The gesture surprised everyone, including the fallen warrior. "You fought well," Minho told him. "I was lucky to survive." Grokthar looked at him with something like respect. "You did not fight like a coward," he said quietly. "You fought like a warrior." The second trial was held the next day. This time, the arena was transformed into a tactical battlefield. Holographic armies appeared on both sides, controlled by the two champions. Minho commanded human forces while tactician Silvex controlled the Korthak troops. The Korthak forces were stronger and better equipped, but Minho used unconventional tactics. He divided his forces into small units that struck quickly and then disappeared. He used the terrain to his advantage, setting ambushes and traps. Silvex became frustrated as his superior forces were worn down by guerrilla warfare. He had never faced an opponent who refused to meet him in direct battle. His tactical training was useless against an enemy who would not fight fair. The simulation lasted for 6 hours. In the end, Minho's forces were outnumbered 3-1, but they controlled the battlefield. Silvex's army was scattered and demoralized. Second trial to the human champion, the AI announced. The crowd was no longer laughing. Beings who had dismissed humans as cowards were starting to pay attention. Something unexpected was happening in the arena. That night, Minho sat alone in his quarters, tending to his wounds. His ribs were cracked, his left arm was nearly useless, and every movement brought pain. But he was still alive, and he had 2 victories. Dr. Jiwan found him there, staring at his hands. "The medical scanners show internal bleeding," she said. "You need treatment." After the third trial, Minho replied, "If I'm still alive." "You don't have to do this," she said quietly. "You've already proved your point. The galaxy has seen that humans can fight." Minho shook his head. "The third champion is the deadliest. If I fall to him, everything we've accomplished means nothing. They'll say I just got lucky in the first 2 fights. And if you die, then at least I'll die fighting. My family would be proud of that." Outside his window, Kepler station buzzed with activity. The third trial would be broadcast to every world in Coalition space. For the first time in their history, the entire galaxy would be watching a human warrior fight for the honor of his species. The final battle would determine not just Minho's fate, but the future of humanity among the stars. The arena had been transformed for the final trial. Instead of a simple combat pit, the floor now contained obstacles, hiding places, and scattered weapons. This would not be a fair fight. It would be a hunt to the death. Master Sergeant Cho, Minho stood at one entrance, trying to ignore the pain from his injuries. His ribs screamed with every breath, and his left arm hung nearly useless at his side. The medical team had done what they could, but there were limits to what could be healed in one night. Across the arena, Shadow Blade Mordak emerged from the shadows like a living nightmare. The Korthak assassin was smaller than the previous champions, but somehow more terrifying. His scales were matte black, designed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His eyes glowed a dull red in the dim arena lighting. "Final trial," announced the arena AI. "Combat to the death. No surrender accepted. The trial ends when one fighter stops breathing." The crowd had grown quiet. Even the aliens who had been betting against Minho seemed uncomfortable with the brutal nature of this final challenge. In the human delegation box, Commander Lee Taeho gripped his chair so tightly his knuckles were white. "Begin," the AI commanded. Mordak vanished. Minho had expected this. The assassin's reputation was built on stealth kills, striking from shadows and disappearing before his enemies could react. The human champion moved carefully toward the center of the arena, his remaining good hand holding his combat knife, while his eyes searched for any sign of movement. The first attack came from above. Mordak dropped from a concealed platform, his claws aimed at Minho's neck. Only the human's combat instinct saved him. He rolled aside at the last second, the claws missing him by inches, but the assassin was already gone again, melting back into the shadows between the arena obstacles. "You fight well for a coward," Mordak's voice echoed from somewhere in the arena. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "But you cannot hide from death forever." Minho did not reply. He knew the assassin was trying to make him afraid, trying to get him to make a mistake. Instead, he found a position with his back to a solid wall and waited. The second attack came from ground level. Mordak's blade sliced across Minho's leg, drawing blood before the assassin vanished again. The human gritted his teeth against the pain but did not move from his position. "Your people abandoned their colonies," Mordak whispered from the darkness. "They left women and children to die while they ran to safety. What kind of warrior serves such cowards?" This time Minho spoke. "The kind who knows that good people sometimes make bad choices when they're scared. The kind who believes they deserve a chance to prove they're better than their worst moment." A third attack came from the side. This time Minho was ready. As Mordak's blade swept toward him, the human grabbed the assassin's wrist with his good hand. The two fighters crashed to the ground, rolling and struggling in brutal close combat. Mordak was faster and less injured, but Minho had something the assassin did not expect. He refused to let go. Even when the Korthak's claws raked across his back, even when the assassin's teeth snapped at his throat, the human held on. They separated after 30 seconds of desperate fighting. Both were bleeding now. Both were hurt. But something had changed. The crowd had seen that the dreaded assassin could be touched, could be hurt. "You should have died quickly," Mordak hissed. "Now I will make it slow." The assassin produced a small device from his belt. Minho recognized it from his intelligence briefings, a poison dart launcher. The toxin would not kill instantly, but it would paralyze him, leaving him helpless while Mordak finished the job. The dart caught Minho in the shoulder. Within seconds, he could feel the poison spreading through his bloodstream. His vision blurred and his remaining good arm began to shake. Mordak emerged from the shadows, moving slowly now, savoring his victory. "This is what happens to those who challenge the strong," he said loud enough for the crowd to hear. "This is the fate of all cowards who pretend to be warriors." Minho fell to his knees, the poison overwhelming his system. The crowd began to murmur. It looked like the final trial was over, but the human was not finished. With the last of his strength, Minho reached into his belt and pulled out a small grenade, not an explosive, but a flashbang designed to blind and disorient enemies. As Mordak approached for the killing blow, Minho triggered the device. The arena filled with blinding light and deafening sound. Mordak screamed and stumbled backward, his sensitive eyes and ears overwhelmed by the assault. Min-ho forced himself to his feet. The poison was killing him, but he was not dead yet. He staggered toward the blinded assassin, his combat knife held in a grip weakened by toxins. Mordak recovered quickly, but those few seconds were enough. Min-ho's blade found the gap between the assassin's armor plates, sliding deep into the Korthak's chest. Both fighters fell to the ground. Min-ho's body was shutting down from the poison, while Mordak bled from the mortal wound. They lay there, dying together in the center of the arena. "Why?" Mordak whispered, his voice barely audible. "Why did you not give up? You were already beaten." Min-ho struggled to speak, his voice thick with pain and poison. "Because giving up would mean you were right about us. And you're not right. You never were." The assassin's red eyes dimmed and went dark. Shadowblade Mordak, who had never failed a mission, was dead. Min-ho lasted 30 seconds longer. As the medical teams rushed into the arena, as the crowd erupted, in shocked silence as the galaxy watched in amazement, the human champion closed his eyes for the final time. But he had won. The arena AI's voice cut through the chaos. Final trial to the human champion. All 3 trials completed successfully. Human honor is restored under coalition law. In the human delegation box, Commander Lee Tae-ho felt his heart breaking and soaring at the same time. Min-ho was dead, but he had done the impossible. He had defeated 3 Korthak champions and proven that humans were not cowards. General Vextar's image appeared on the arena screens. For the first time since the trials began, the Korthak general looked uncertain. "The combat results are acceptable," he said slowly, "but this changes nothing. One warrior cannot make up for the cowardice of an entire species." But something had already changed. In the crowd, alien spectators who had been mocking humans were now silent. The betting pools had been forgotten. Everyone had seen something they had not expected, a human fighting impossible odds and refusing to surrender even in the face of certain death. News of Min-ho's victory spread across coalition space faster than light. On human colonies and stations throughout the galaxy, people gathered around screens to watch the recordings. Many wept for the man who had died to restore their honor. Others felt a pride they had not experienced in years. But on the bridge of General Vextar's flagship, something else was happening. The Korthak general was reviewing the combat footage, studying how a supposedly weak human had defeated his best warriors. "Sir," his aide said nervously, "the Coalition Council is demanding that we honor the combat results. They say we must acknowledge that humans have proven their courage." Vextar's claws scraped against his command chair. "One human got lucky 3 times. That proves nothing." "But sir, the law, Vextar snarled, "was written by weaklings who do not understand the nature of true strength. Ready the fleet for departure." "Sir, where are we going?" Vextar's yellow eyes burned with hatred. "To finish what we started. If the galaxy thinks one dead human has changed anything, they are about to learn otherwise. We will destroy Kepler, Station and everyone on it. Let them see what happens to those who defy the Korthak Empire." As the massive Korthak fleet began moving toward Kepler Station, the real test was about to begin. Min-ho had won the individual battles, but the war for humanity's future was just starting. The warning came from a Regelian scout ship on the edge of the Kepler system. Captain Park So-young received the message while she was still in the arena, watching the medical teams prepare Min-ho's body for the journey home. "Korthak fleet approaching," the scout reported. 57 warships, including General Vextar's flagship, estimated arrival in 4 hours. So-young felt her blood turn cold. The trials were over. Min-ho had won, had died proving human courage to the galaxy. But Vextar was coming to destroy everyone who had witnessed that victory. She ran to find Commander Lee Tae-ho, who was still in shock from watching his friend die in the arena. "Sir, we have a problem," she said, showing him the scout report. "Tae-ho, read the message twice before the words made sense. He's violating coalition law. The trials are over. Min-ho won." "Vextar doesn't care about coalition law," So-young replied. He's coming to finish what he started. Around them, the alien delegates who had watched the trials were beginning to panic. Kepler Station had minimal defenses designed for diplomatic meetings rather than military action. A few coalition patrol ships were in the area, but nothing that could stand against a full Korthak battle fleet. "How many human ships are in range?" Taeho asked. So Young checked her datapad. 12 vessels, mix of patrol ships and transports, were outnumbered more than 4-1. And the other coalition species? The Centauri fleet is 3 days away. The Vegans have 2 ships in the next system, but they're requesting orders from their government. The Rigelians are considering their options. Taeho understood. The alien species were not eager to fight a major battle to protect the humans who had been called cowards just days before. Minho's victory in the arena meant something, but not enough to risk their own fleets. "Then we fight alone," he said, quietly. So Young nodded. She had expected this answer. "I'll contact our ships and set up a defensive formation." As news of the approaching Korthak fleet spread through Kepler Station, most of the alien delegates began evacuating. Ships launched from the station's docking bays as quickly as possible, carrying ambassadors and reporters back to their homeworlds. But not all of them left. Admiral Kim Dong-woo arrived on the bridge of the human command ship just as the defensive formations were taking shape. The old man looked tired, but his eyes burned with determination. "I should have fought like this at the colonies," he told Taeho. "I should have stood and died instead of running. You saved thousands of lives by evacuating when you did," Taeho replied, "and lost millions more." Kim took his position at the command console. "Today we make up for that mistake." The human fleet formed up between Kepler Station and the approaching Korthak force. 12 ships against 57. The odds were impossible, but nobody talked about retreat. On the station, Dr. Han Ji-won coordinated the evacuation of non-essential personnel, but many humans refused to leave. They had watched Minho die to restore their honor, and they would not abandon that sacrifice now. "The Altarians are staying," reported Lieutenant Baek Soo-jin from the communication station. "Their delegation leader says the trials were conducted under Altarian legal authority, and they won't let the Korthak Empire violate that." "How many ships?" Taeho asked. 3 cruisers. Not much, but it's something. More reports came in over the next hour. A Vegan destroyer had been ordered to remain and observe. 2 Rigelian ships were experiencing engine problems that prevented them from leaving the system. Even a small Centauri science vessel decided to stay. By the time the Korthak fleet arrived at the edge of the system, the human force had grown to 21 ships. Still outnumbered, still outgunned, but no longer completely alone. General Vextar's voice came over the communications channel, broadcast to every ship in the system. "Beings of the galaxy," he announced, "today you will see the true nature of strength. These humans think one lucky warrior has changed their nature. They are wrong. They are still cowards, and today they will die like cowards." Taeho opened a channel to respond. "General Vextar, you are in violation of coalition law. The trials have ended. Human honor has been restored by right of combat." "Honor?" Vextar laughed. "There is no honor in victory through luck and trickery. There is only strength and weakness. Today I will show you which one you truly are." The Korthak fleet began moving into attack formation. Their ships were massive, built for destruction rather than elegance. Each one carried enough firepower to level a city. "All ships, this is Admiral Kim." The old man's voice came over the fleet channel. "We are outnumbered and outgunned. Many of us will not survive the next hour. But we will fight, and we will make them pay for every meter of space they take." The battle began when the Korthak ships opened fire at maximum range. Space lit up with plasma beams and missile explosions. The human ships scattered, using their superior speed and maneuverability to avoid the worst of the bombardment. But they could not avoid it all. The human destroyer Seoul took a direct hit and exploded, killing all hands. The transport ship Busan lost power and began drifting helplessly. "Focus fire on their flagship," Kim ordered. "If we can take out Vextar, the others might withdraw." The Human fleet concentrated their attack on the massive Korthak command ship. Their weapons were smaller than the enemy's, but they were more precise. Slowly, they began to wear down the flagship's shields, but the cost was terrible. Ship after ship fell to the Korthak guns. The patrol boat Incheon disappeared in a ball of fire. The cruiser Daegu lost half its crew to a hull breach. And then something unexpected happened. The Altarian cruiser Bright Star, which had been hanging back from the main battle, suddenly accelerated toward the Korthak line. Captain Lim Young-soo, who had been coordinating with the alien ship, watched in amazement as the Altarian vessel began broadcasting on all frequencies. "This is Captain Zeth Ara of the Altarian Navy," came the voice. "The human champion fought with honor and died with courage. Any being who would dishonor such sacrifice is no warrior, but a coward who fears the truth." The Altarian ship slammed into a Korthak destroyer, destroying both vessels in a massive explosion. But the sacrifice gave the human fleet the opening they needed. Admiral Kim ordered all remaining ships to follow the Altarian example. "All craft ramming speed," he commanded. "Make every shot count." What followed was not a battle, but a demonstration of will. Human ships, damaged and outnumbered, threw themselves at the Korthak fleet with desperate courage. They used every trick Minho had shown in the arena: speed instead of strength, intelligence instead of brute force, and the willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. The battle turned when Captain So Young, piloting a badly damaged fighter, managed to penetrate the Korthak flagship's defenses. Her ship was too small to destroy the massive vessel, but she could target its command systems. "For Minho," she whispered as she triggered her ship's self-destruct sequence inside the flagship's bridge. The explosion crippled Vextar's ship and killed the general who had called humans cowards. Without their leader, the Korthak fleet began to falter. Some ships retreated. Others continued fighting, but without coordination. By the time reinforcements arrived from the coalition fleet, the battle was over. The Korthak force had been destroyed, or scattered, but the cost had been enormous. Of the 21 ships that had defended Kepler Station, only 7 survived. Admiral Kim's ship was among the casualties. The old man had gone down fighting, finally finding the courage he thought he had lost at the colonies. Commander Taeho, now the senior human officer, stood on the bridge of one of the surviving ships and looked out at the debris field that marked the battle. Hundreds of good people had died, human and alien alike. But they had won. News of the Battle of Kepler spread across the galaxy even faster than word of Minho's arena victories. The images were impossible to ignore. Human ships throwing themselves at superior forces, alien vessels fighting alongside them, and the wreckage of a Korthak fleet that had thought itself invincible. The galaxy's opinion of humanity changed overnight. No longer were they seen as cowards or weaklings. They were the species that had sent one warrior to face impossible odds, and when that warrior died victorious, had been willing to fight a hopeless battle to honor his sacrifice. Within weeks, requests began arriving from across coalition space. Human officers were wanted for command positions. Human tactics were studied in military academies. Human courage became the standard by which other species measured their own bravery. Taeho, promoted to admiral after the battle, stood in his new office on coalition headquarters and looked at the memorial wall. Minho's name was there, along with all the others who had died at Kepler. But their sacrifice had not been in vain. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not as the species that ran when things got difficult, but as the one that would fight impossible battles for the sake of honor and the protection of those who could not protect themselves. The galaxy had called them cowards. Their answer had been written in blood and courage, in the arena where one warrior faced death for his people's honor, and in the space above Kepler where fleets had fought for the right to be treated with respect. It was an answer the galaxy would never forget.